Dorrit's Rescue Mission, Chapter 33. "Okay," shouted Solo. "Who's next?" "Me," said Petrel, raising her hand. "Come up," said Solo. "It's a good one for you to read. Dorrit's Rescue Mission." Petrel took the pink folder from Solo and turned to look at everyone. "Now, you'll find out where we've been living since leaving the Dew household," she said. Solo patted her on the back as everyone roared with approval. Back in Innisfree, it was 10 in the morning on the day after Solo had met up with Godot in again. The tunnel kids were huddled in a new hiding spot deep under the ground. This time it was part of an old hospital. There were blankets in there, so they were warm, but it was an ugly place and they all felt anxious. Dodger was cross with Petrel for making them run away from the Dews in the first place. If they were honest, so were Nose and Bullant. "Why should we do what she says?" asked Petrel. "Why should we do what Nell Dew says?" asked Petrel. "She's not our mother, but she was being so bossy." "She was worried for us," said Dodger. "She rescued me." "She's not bad. We've looked after ourselves for so long now," snapped Petrel, "as if we need her." Dodger shook his head. "I think she was trying to help," he said. "Bad luck," said Petrel. "We can do it by ourselves. We'll be safer this way." "It would be good to have some help," said Dodger. "No," said Petrel. "We've got this." Petrel frowned at Dodger, daring him to disagree. Reluctantly, Dodger nodded. When it was time for the rescue mission to go ahead, Nose was terrified. They were set on rescuing Dorrit, but when it was time for the rescue mission to go ahead, Nose was terrified. "We shouldn't go," he said. "I have a terrible feeling we're going to be caught." "Should we message Solo, ask him to come with us?" asked Dodger. Petrel frowned. "Oh, go on then," said Petrel, "but we're only giving him 10 minutes. If he can't get here by then, we're going alone, okay?" Dodger looked down and shrugged. He sent a message to Solo, asking if he could help rescue Dorrit. The tunnel kids sat in the miserable old hospital storage unit and waited. 10 minutes went by and there was no response from Solo. He was miles under the ground, but the tunneled kids didn't know that. "Oh, let's go," said Petrel, sounding grumpy. "He clearly doesn't care." "I could try Toll," said Dodger. "No," said Petrel firmly. "We're running out of time." Dodger sighed. "We'll need a blanket," he said. "Dorrit will freeze down here." Nose grabbed a blanket and together the 5 children snuck through the tunnels to the thieves' horrible boarding school. Once they were there, they waited underneath a trapdoor for over 4 hours. It was so cold that Squid had to be wrapped in the blanket meant for Dorrit. Finally, at 3 in the morning, they decided to abandon it can't be 3 in the morning. We started at 10. Yeah, so that timing doesn't make sense. I'm going to have to fix that up. Finally, they decided to abandon their rescue. They could hear the school guards. They could still hear the school guards playing cards above them, and they were all utterly frozen. To make things worse, Dodger twisted his ankle on the way back to the hospital storage unit. His ankle swelled up so badly that Petrel had to make a bandage from one of the old nurse's uniforms. Dodger hoped that Solo would message him soon. He could hardly believe that he hadn't already. The next morning they went outside to wait for last night's bread at a bakery that was kind to them. While they were there, a boy hanging around looked at them. Hey, said Petrol, what are you looking at? The children were dressed in the fresh clothes given to them by the Jews, but they still looked ragged from tunnelling. Most of them, they still looked ragged from tunnelling and sleeping rough. I have a message for someone called Petrol, said the boy. We know her, said Petrol, but she's not here today. We can take the message for her, said Dodger. The boy nodded, handing a piece of paper to Dodger. After he'd gone, Petrol opened the message. It was printed on paper from Medici Pizzeria. I know them, said Nose. They sometimes give us free pizza. Petrol nodded, reading the paper. It's from our cousin, she said. Al. Petrol and Squid's cousin had worked as a waiter for Medici before he and his father left Tregolan for Dragol Island. Just in case you don't know, Dragol is pronounced Dragol and not Dragol. It's a large island far across the sea. Al had sent a message hoping that Medici's owners might know of Petrol. As chance would have it, they did. A few nights earlier, Isla had arrived on Dragol Island. She'd headed for Drage, the capital city. It was there that Petrol's cousin Al had interviewed her for the local newspaper. He called his article Isla's Homeless Children, as precious as her necklace of pearls. Copies of the article he hoped to publish were attached to his message to his cousin. Dearest Petrol, I hope this message finds you and your family well. I'm writing because I've been in contact with a woman from Dragolan. Her name is Isla Thieve, and there is something very strange about her. I believe she is up to no good, and I'm asking you to find out something for me. When I interviewed her, she was wearing a pearl necklace. It was ugly, but there was something about it. Every second pearl was multicoloured, almost as if it was an opal, but Isla assured me that all the beads were pearls. What was odd was that when I said I was going to call my article Isla's Homeless Children, as precious as her necklace of pearls, she became quite upset. She even mentioned legal action. Of course, this only spurred me on, so I asked everyone I could about her necklace. She claims it was bought from an Innisfree jeweller who operates a business called the House of Dragolan. She says it was bought on Christmas Eve as a gift for her by one of Vancro Snark's people. He's the Prime Minister of Dragolan, and she seems very proud to know him. Could you go into the shop and see if this is true? Pretend you are one of Snark's assistants, or that you're Isla's niece or something. Maybe say that there is an insurance claim on the necklace. That should do the trick. And be quick. I don't want Isla to bribe them to change their story. Hopefully she won't even realise that I have a contact in Dragolan. I feel sure that there's a story in this. Message me back as soon as you can. Your cousin, Al. P.S. I'll explain what I'm thinking as soon as I can. Petrol was both elated and terrified. Her relatives had finally contacted her, and now she could let them know what had happened to her parents. But she hated going into public spaces alone. So how was she ever going to do what Al had asked?